He said it was impossible, until a 9-year-old proved him wrong. The Harvard lecture hall was massive, every seat filled, the air thick with curiosity and respect. Top professors, eager students, and reporters from around the world were all waiting. Dr. Wallace, one of the smartest mathematicians alive, wrote a complicated equation on the blackboard. He stepped back, looked at the room, and said with absolute confidence, "This equation cannot be solved." Murmurs of agreement spread. Everyone assumed he was right. No one questioned it. No one dared. But then, a tiny hand slowly rose from the back row. A 9-year-old boy, small and quiet, daring to challenge the impossible. And what he said next made the entire hall stop in shock. Everyone in the hall couldn't believe their eyes. A kid. Here. In Harvard. His name was Ian. Just 9 years old, wearing a worn-out sweater and holding a battered notebook. He wasn't a student. He was just waiting for his father, the janitor. Dr. Wallace looked at him and laughed. "This is advanced physics, not a riddle, kid." The room burst into laughter too. People shook their heads, thinking this was a joke. But Ian stayed calm. He looked up and said, softly but firmly, "Can I try?" Suddenly, the laughter stopped. Everyone froze. There was something in his voice, something that made even the professor pause. And that pause would change everything. Sometimes, silence says more than any laugh. Ian walked up to the front, small hand clutching a piece of chalk that looked almost too big for him. He stared at the massive, impossible-looking equation on the board. Then, slowly, he began to write. Line after line, his chalk moving with surprising confidence. The hall went completely silent. Not a whisper. Not a cough. Everyone's eyes were glued to him. When he finally stepped back, the professor walked toward the board. And as he looked, his expression started to change. Something was happening no one saw coming. In his entire career, Dr. Wallace had never seen anything like this. He checked the solution once. Then again. Each time, his confident smile faded a little more. His hands trembled as he turned to the audience, voice barely steady. This is correct." Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Everyone in the hall was frozen, some whispering, some gasping. Then he asked, almost in disbelief, "Who taught you this?" Ian looked calm and said, "My father." Every head slowly turned toward the janitor standing quietly at the back. The room went completely silent. Nobody had expected this. They saw him every day, but no one really noticed him. Ian's father had been the janitor at Harvard for years. He had never stepped foot in a university as a student. Yet, every evening after work, he would quietly read discarded physics books, soaking in the knowledge that most people ignored. He taught everything he learned to his son, patiently, line by line, without anyone knowing. Now, the professor slowly walked toward the janitor. The entire hall held its breath, waiting for what he would say. And when he spoke, everyone froze in shock. Education can give knowledge, but respect is something you have to earn. Dr. Wallace stepped forward and shook the janitor's hand. "Sir, you raised a genius," he said, his voice full of admiration. The whole hall stood up, clapping and cheering. Phones were out, cameras clicking, and everyone was whispering in disbelief. Tears filled the janitor's eyes. 4 years, no one had noticed him, but now the world was watching. Ian held his father's hand tightly, his small face full of pride. But this moment of triumph was just the beginning. The real storm was coming the very next morning. One night, he was a nobody. By the next morning, the whole world knew his name. News channels were buzzing. Headlines screamed across newspapers and websites. Universities sent scholarship offers. Scientists were shocked, impressed, and completely amazed. Everyone wanted to know more about the boy genius. Everyone, except no one knew the real reason Ian came to Harvard every single day. And that secret was about to change everything. Every success has a story, and some are written with pain. Ian's father had once dreamed of studying science, solving big problems, and making discoveries. But life had other plans, and he became a janitor instead. Still, he refused to let his son give up. Every night, he would sit with Ian, teaching, explaining, encouraging. "Never think like everyone else," he would say. "Think different." And then, one evening, Ian spoke a sentence. One that made even the professor stop and go completely silent. Sometimes, just one sentence can stop a room in its tracks. Ian looked around and said, "My father is my greatest teacher." For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then the hall erupted into applause. Cameras clicked, people cheered, and tears filled the eyes of everyone watching. His father hugged him tightly, pride shining through every tear. A child with no classroom, no degree, had solved the impossible. And in that moment, it became clear to everyone. Genius doesn't wear a uniform, hold a title, or have an age. The brightest minds often come from the quietest, most unexpected places.